Now hear the word of the Lord from Proverbs 27, 5 through 9. An open rebuke is better than hidden love. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. A person who is full refuses honey, but even bitter food tastes sweet to the hungry. A person who strays from home is like a bird that strays from its nest. The heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Well, good morning, Sojourn. Peace be with you. Boy, remember when it was blizzarding a few minutes ago? Now, I didn't think anyone was coming to church today, so hey, welcome. It's good to see you guys. If you're a guest, if you're visiting with us, my name's Jonah, and our mission as a church is to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the good news of who he is and what he's done for us, and then build one another up as his church and send each other to follow him as instruments of truth, beauty, and goodness. So thank you all so much for being here. The topic, we're coming to the end of our How to Go to Church series. We've got this week and next week, and just heads up, I'm pretty sure I agree with most of what I'm going to say today, but you never know. I use so many words. It's like I can't commit to everything, but 90% I'm going to agree with. The topic's hard to talk about, and it's harder to solve. So heads up. It's been hard, as far as I can tell, it's been hard for people for a few thousand years. So maybe it's been like more recently difficult, the last 50 or 60 years, maybe, but there's just not going to be any easy way around what we're talking about. To do so, to address it, to get what we're talking about, I want you to know you can have what's offered for you today, or to you today, but it requires effort. It will be difficult. And like anything that's beautiful in life, what we're talking about today will require effort on your part. One of the most difficult things about like Western, predominantly white evangelical Christians, like we want stuff provided for us. We want someone to come and give it to us. And as much as I wish I could, what we're talking about today, I cannot give to you. I cannot provide it to you. No system, no structure in this church can give it to you. You will have to go get it. But I think that's the same with anything beautiful in life. I'll try to share God's vision for what we're going to talk about this morning, but just, again, think, you've got some parents in here, yeah? Is parenting good? Is it beautiful, satisfying, wonderful, shockingly difficult, yeah? If you have a child, at some point you looked at the person you made that child with, and you said, what have we done, right? Physical fitness, this is a new thing I've been looking into for a year and a half or so. Allegedly, everything goes better if you take care of yourself, right? That's the pitch. For those of you who exercise, difficult, yeah. And some of you are weird, and you're the people that are like, I just can't get enough of it. I wake up in the morning, I love it. And one day I'll be that person. I'm not that person today. It's very, very, very difficult. Finances, if you're married, well, if you're not married, finances period are hard, but married folk fight about this stuff all the time. To have a stable financial life, to have the freedom that comes from the discipline of stewarding your finances, it's incredibly difficult. It's not so hard to listen to the Dave Ramsey thing. It's harder to get the envelopes out. Anybody done the envelopes? You know, it's easy to think about it, but to actually do it. So as it is, everything in life that's worth doing, everything that's beautiful, that's satisfying, that's rewarding, everything in life worth doing requires effort on the part of those who want it. And so it is with what I'm going to invite us to this morning. If you want it, you can go get it. Do I need to say that again? It's yours to go get. It's ours to go get if we're willing to put in the effort. The problem that I want us to consider for a moment is the problem of loneliness. You don't have to answer, obviously, because of where we are, but you know, what comes to your mind? What do you notice when you hear the word loneliness? Some of you maybe think of statistics. There's all kinds of ways that science catches up with the Bible. I always get excited when secular sciences teach something that the Bible's been teaching for a few thousand years. So lately, we've been learning that people who are chronically lonely, they die early twice as often as people who have satisfying relationships. And the scriptures have been telling us since the beginning that we were made for relationships. If you're chronically lonely, it produces inflammation within your body and it weakens your immune system. You get sick more often if you are lonely. This one blows my mind. Loneliness is more dangerous than smoking or obesity. Maybe instead of thinking about statistics or science, when you think of loneliness, you think about your own story. To know people is to be hurt by people at some point. You know, it's kind of wild. Most of the wounds I carry, most of the significant pain in my life I carry were put there by friends or by people that I really love. Loneliness is a topic that brings up a lot of pain and a lot of fear among most, if not all of us. And to make matters maybe just a little bit more complicated, God's solution to the problem of loneliness is another word that most of us are uncomfortable with or at least struggle with. God's solution to the problem of loneliness is this concept called friendship. And I want you to know that as we're talking about friendship today, this is not a church strategy. This is not a product that the church is meant to give you. This is God's design for how humans are meant to live. God exists in community. Y'all know what we call the community God exists within? We call that Trinity, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There has never been any time where God has not existed within the context of a relational community. When God works, whether it's in the unseen realm or the seen realm, he always does so through a community. In the unseen realm, we have this group, the heavenly host, or the divine council, or the cherubim, or the seraphim, or angels. He has all these different beings that he works through. Here on earth, if God wants to work, he works through people. Whether it's restoration, salvation, acts of leadership, and that's why we know names like Moses, or Ruth, or David, or Deborah. Ultimately, God chooses to save people through a person, the second person of the Trinity, Jesus. I could do this all morning to plead my case to you that God exists as community. God lives and participates in the context of community. He works through community. Fundamentally, what the scriptures reveal is that the God of the universe's fundamental orientation is relational, meaning God is all about relationships. Everything exists for the purpose of relationships because God exists for relationships. God described salvation as adoption. That's a profound relational longing that motivates that. You don't adopt a child so you can put a picture of an adoption certificate on the mantle and be like, look, we've adopted. You do that for a child. It's a relational longing that drives that. So what we're appealing to here, both the problem that is loneliness and the invitation that is friendship, you're hardwired for it as a human being because you're made in the image of God. But there's some significant challenges. This is where I think it might be unique to us, or maybe more difficult for Westerners, particularly Americans, to experience friendship. Have you noticed how our culture is constantly performing for one another? You might think of it as a culture of superficiality. Say the right thing, look the right way. We have to put on a face for others so that we might be more acceptable for them. So long as you are performing, your loneliness will increase because the version of you that other people get to know is not who you actually are. So long as our culture demands that we perform for them, we will only become more lonely. We celebrate individualism as a culture, and we demonize community. This has become very apparent in the last few years, where if you hear phrases like group identity, that immediately has political connotations. If you want to identify as part of a group, well, now you're part of the woke mob, or you're a socialist, or whatever, and all these labels get thrown at you. Our vision of the ideal American, particularly for a man, is the guy on the solitary white horse. You can see it, right? The silhouette on top of the hill where everybody's gone bad up here except for the one guy, and he's going to ride down and handle it all on himself. We love this image of the guy who pulled himself up by his bootstraps, which that image was not meant to be encouraging when it was first set up. It was meant to be ironic. And if you don't understand why, go home and put boots on and try to pick yourself up by those boot straps. It's not possible. It's meant to say we can't do anything on our own. We're supposed to be part of a community. This is how God has hardwired us. But We celebrate individualism as a culture, and individualism breeds loneliness. It's a distortion of God's design. And finally, and perhaps most uncomfortably, our culture has lost any sense of non-sexual intimacy. And maybe when you hear that, you're like, well, I didn't even know that was a thing. And if you're thinking that, that's my whole point. That first Proverbs 27, the whole thing is great. I just encourage you to go spend some time with it. I think it's really interesting in verse 6, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. And maybe that's confusing to us, but there's friendship and kissing in the same verse. What's this about? But also the image of like, why would an enemy kiss you? Because we don't have any concept of non-sexual intimacy or affection. If I ask you to imagine a kiss or to describe a kiss, I just wonder how many of us, our first thought is to some kind of sexual activity. Here, can we have a shared moment of mutual discomfort? That'll be okay? I'm going to do it anyway, so you can leave if you want. If I asked you, when's the last time you kissed a close friend? What? You feel that for a second? And then, we have no concept of it. At least not one that we would find to be culturally or morally appropriate. Our culture, our American culture, has no concept of non-sexual intimacy, which means we do not know how to be close in non-sexual ways, which means most of us are quite lonely. All of these factors conspire together to keep me and you lonely. All of these cultural values contradict God's relational nature, and they contradict God's vision for human intimacy. So his vision is a word we know, but very few of us have, and that's friendship. The invitation for us here is to go to church to pursue God's vision of friendship. And I just want to, again, stress that pursue word. I so wish we could be like, hey, grab some snacks. If you want to help the kids go to summer camp, you can get that hat. And if you want a friend at the end of the aisle, you can sign up for which friend you want, and we will Amazon Prime the friend to you. I wish it, but that's not the way it is. Like all things, you will have to pursue it. You will have to prioritize it. But if you want it, you can get it. We'll consider God's vision for friendship, and my prayer is that it spurs you on to greater hope, greater faith to actually pursue it. So I'm kind of summarizing God's vision, or 3 words to mark our reflections on this together would be affection, participation, and honesty. Biblical friendship is marked by affection, participation, and honesty. I want to start by thinking about affection for a second, because again, like intimacy, affection is a word that tends to have sexual connotations with it. It can, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Libby Thorngate's one of our members. She wrote the liturgy this week, which is like all of our prayers, all the songs. She didn't write the songs, she picked the songs. And in our meeting where we were talking about the liturgy for the week, she shared this quote with us by a lady named Simone Weil. She said, attention is the purest and rarest form of generosity. When you think of affection, maybe a good place to start would simply be attention. It has connotations of presence, of curiosity, of really seeing someone. And it's not attention when you only see someone for what you can get out of them. Our culture is lonely in part because we tend to only pay attention to ourselves. So few of us are actually asking questions and listening to one another. We see others oftentimes as a means to an end. We look to consume others, not to know them. Paul, the apostle, picks up on these themes from Proverbs throughout his letter to the Romans. You can read it and tell that this is a guy who spent a lot of time in Proverbs, and he kind of shows us what this actually looks like in some of his letters. In Romans 12, he says, don't just pretend to love others, because that's the good cultural thing to do. You can fake it. He says, don't just pretend, really love them. Love one another with genuine affection. Take delight in honoring each other. Sometimes we take love verses in the United States and we make it, surely this is a marriage verse. This verse is not about marriage. This verse is about how people in the church are supposed to relate to one another. And that word genuine affection, it means brotherly. It's where we get the word Philadelphia from. Go Eagles, amen. Sorry, I didn't know you were here. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. That just happened. I'm sorry. Truly, I'm sorry. Philadelphia, that's where the word comes from for eagles, for Philadelphia, for brotherly affection. I just got to reset. You want to come up and hit me or something? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So we could say that verse, he says, love one another with brotherly affection. So if you want to hear nothing else, if you want to just let your imagination make the application for you, you know what we get asked a lot in this church? How should men and women relate to one another? Do you feel that discomfort? What's the role of men? What's the role of women? I will solve it for you now. Men, love the women in this church like they were your sister. Would you treat your sister that way? Would you look at your sister that way? Would you do that to your sister? The ladies, how should we relate to the men in the church? Like he's your brother. Genuinely, truly, brotherly, because we're meant to be a family. This metaphor is meant to guide how we interact with one another. Well, how do we treat the kids, the elderly, the pastors, the staff? Love each other. Love one another with brotherly affection. This is not sexual. If any pastor says, hey, look, he said be affectionate, so let's, cults do that sort of thing, don't listen to that. That's not what it's talking about. How we relate to one another as a family. It's a generosity. It's an act of attention, of presence. It's an invitation to tune your heart to another. This is maybe another simple way of thinking about affection, tuning your heart to another. So we resonate on the same frequency. When your heart is tuned to somebody else, it means you've listened to them long enough to know what it takes to really make them feel loved. And maybe that first part is where we need to begin. We've listened long enough. We've listened. Are we a people of curiosity? If you're lonely, you probably struggle to listen or to ask questions or to be curious. So we listen, we get curious to really know someone long enough. What makes them feel loved? And then once we've discerned that, once we've excavated that, we actually do it. We actually do it. We know what makes someone else's heart sing, and so we sing for them, We play that song for them. Having your heart tuned to another, this is a big cultural misunderstanding we have. There's like 4,000 reasons we're lonely. Have you noticed that the only way we can love one another is if we agree with one another? Have you noticed this lately? This has happened very recently, 30, 40, 50 years of our culture. Now, if I disagree with you, I hate you. If I disagree with you, we are enemies. If I disagree with you, we can't be family. All these proverbs about true friendship include disagreement. Affection does not mean we agree about everything. Affection is a commitment to the good of another. If I see you jumping off a bridge, I may say something to you like, this is going to harm you a great deal. I don't agree with this decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want to just allow people to go destroy themselves. I like how it talked about, it connected genuine affection in Romans 12 with honoring one another. What do we honor? What do we put on the mantle? What do we put in a safe place? Things that are precious to us, things that are valuable to us. So we treat people not like we can just get something out of them, but like they're precious to us. Affection is a commitment to the good of another, to taking care of someone else, which again means we're willing to say things like, I love you so much that I'm worried this will harm you. We have to get out of our minds that we can't disagree with people that we love. So has anybody been to a Christian wedding before? You've watched this? What's the big love verse that always happens at weddings? Anybody know it? You don't have to quote it, but what's the verse and chapter? 1 Corinthians 13? Yeah, I'm about to blow your minds, people. That passage is not about marriage. Did you know that? I learned this very recently listening to a pastor from Tennessee, Sam Alberry, talk about friendship. I'm kind of doing a poor job of copying his sermon, so you should go listen to his sermon from Harbor Network back in October. It blew my mind, and I went back and, I looked at 1 Corinthians 13, and it's not about marriage. It's about how people relate to one another within the church. So what does affection look like? Well, be reminded, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. No, love never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. So if you're like, what does it mean for me to be affectionate or to be a friend? Just meditate on this and live into it. Love never gives up. Love rejoices whenever the truth wins up. But what if the Republicans are right? Do we rejoice then? What if the Democrats are right? You see what I'm saying? Like, these principles transcend all of these cultural divisions that we have. Is it true? Is it good? Is it beautiful? We'll rejoice about it. I'll be patient with you. I won't be irritable with you. All of these kinds of things. Does 1 Corinthians 13 apply about marriage? Bro, if your marriage looked like this, you would have a great marriage, right? If you have friends like this, you have great friends. 1 Corinthians 13 applies wherever affection belongs, wherever affection is shared. Think for a second about, how did Jesus show up on the scene, and how might that invite or model for us the way that we show up in rooms? Jesus, it blows my mind. If any of this is true, okay? If this part of the story is true, guys, think about this. God decides to come on the scene. How does he come on the scene? Little baby, manger, field. Who gets told about it first? Shepherds, which, these guys were filthy old men sleeping out in the woods, and that's who God shows up for. The humility of how God shows up. That same guy, Sam Albany, in his sermon, he quoted his friend's dad. So I'm quoting Sam, who's quoting his friend, who's quoting his dad. He said there's two ways you can show up into a room. One of them, this is most of us, whether it's visible or just in our hearts, we show up to a room and say, here I am. What can this place get? What can I do here? What can this place do for me here? What connections can I make? Do they see me? Do they see how great I am? Do they see how hard I've worked? Do they see how much money I have? Do they see? And most of them don't see. And so we feel more pressure to show up differently, or to put the face on, or to put the mask on. Our culture teaches us to walk into rooms and shout, here I am. But how did God walk into the room? And how is he inviting us to walk into the room? People of genuine affection, genuine friendship, walk into a room, they see a friend, and they say, there you are. Here I am versus there you are. Biblical friendship, Proverbs 27 friendship, Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 13 friendship, walks into a room, points at someone we love, and says, there you are. True affection will move us past consumption, where we just see people as a means to an end, only looking to what we can get from them, and moves us into that second word, participation. True affection will move us to participation. And when you hear participation, think reciprocation. Give and take. So I'll tell you, if you're a friend, and if you think of a friend, if you only give to that person and never take from that person, you got something, but you don't have a friend. If you're in a relationship and that person only takes from you and never, you're in something, but that's not a friendship. Some of you know what it's like to be in those one-way, non-reciprocal relationships. That is not friendship. A biblical vision of friendship is I give and I take. You give and you take, because we are in this together. Let me give you some examples. Proverbs 27, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. A few verses later, the heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. Y'all like perfume? Who doesn't like stuff that smells nice? I benefit from that, even though I'm wounded by that, because it's not always pleasant to hear, ways that you screwed up. I don't just agree with you. I point out places where your life is going sideways, and in return, a true friend will receive that as the gift that it is. Not fuss and fight and get defensive and say how wrong you are and how dare you. And Proverbs 19, wealth makes many friends. Notice the Bible put that in quotes, not me. Poverty drives them away. Everyone is a friend of a person who gives gifts. Most of us tend to have relationships of convenience and consumption. We get close to someone because of what they can provide for us. Boy, watch someone who gets wealthy suddenly become very popular. This is one reason we struggle so much when other people are hurting. Here's a verse I wish more Christians had memorized. Proverbs 25:20, singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound. Friendship, real affection means I will participate in your sadness with you. I'm willing to be with you where you are, even if that's not where I am. If you are sad, I will be sad too. If you are happy, and you know what I'm not? I'm going to try to get up and be in that happy place with you. There'll be time for my sadness, just like there'll be time for your happiness. I won't try to cheer you up to make me feel better. Isn't that what we do? We can't stand the discomfort of the hospital room, and so I'll try to cheer you up because this is making me uncomfortable. But real friendship will participate in the full range of human emotions with one another. Here's a beautiful picture of this in the life of Paul. And he wrote to the people of Philippi, the Philippians. He was talking about his dear friend Epaphroditus. It's cool that Paul had friends. And he said, I'm sending him, that's Epaphroditus, because he's been longing to see you. Feel the desire there? He was very distressed that you heard he was ill. And keep in mind, this is not like I'm going to get on the highway and come visit you in Indianapolis this evening. Like, this is a long trip, significant effort, and this guy was longing to see them. And did you catch why? Why is Epaphroditus upset? Because he heard his friends were upset. Why were his friends upset? Because they heard Epaphroditus was sick. You see the mutuality there. I'm concerned because you're concerned, and you're concerned because I'm hurting. They're concerned for each other because they care for each other. This is wild. Paul, after that, says, but God had mercy on him, which means Epaphroditus didn't die, but also on me, so that I would not have one sorrow after another. Isn't that amazing? I prayed for you to get better because I wanted you to get better, but also because of how sad it would be for me to lose my friend. Concern for you, concern for me. There's a give and a take. There's a reciprocity in Christian friendship where we're meant to participate in the lives of one another. Faithful participation, good times and bad. There's a lot that I want to say, that we could say. We're going to say more next week, particularly about how Jesus has been a friend to us, how he does all of this and more for us. But may we be a people who don't settle for social media connections. Like, I know your Facebook page says you have 2,000 friends. Ask some folks to help you dig a ditch in your backyard to replace your sewer line, and 1.5 of those Facebook friends will, right? Like, friendship happens in face-to-face presence and participation. If you think about it, there's a kind of a theme. Going to church, presence, participation, prayer, Bible, all of these things we've talked about, we have to keep showing up for. And maybe the best way we can learn to participate and receive participation from others is by becoming a people of greater honesty. I'm only going to touch on this for time's sake, but verse 5 again, an open rebuke is better than hidden love. Friends would rather you say something hard to me than think very highly of me and keep it a secret. Reciprocal honesty. Someone has to be honest enough to speak to you, and you have to be honest enough about who you are to know that it is worthy of being spoken to you. Let me say that simpler. You have to be honest enough to be willing to say the hard thing to your friend, and then you have to realize how probable it is that you're wrong, that you're willing to believe your friend. When they say something, I'm going to listen to it. Honesty, even a rebuke, is better than keeping our love a secret. But what if we pushed back? What if we were willing to just say for a moment, you know what? America's not perfect. Did you know that? What if we were willing to say there are some things about our culture that are just wrong? It's not right, and we won't be this way. So here would be an example. Let's be radical Christians. You guys remember that? It's okay. I have PTSD from that book, Radical. It was all, whatever. I'll talk to you about it later. I mean, I went to doctors and stuff over it. It's like not as a joke, not a joke. What do we mean by radical Christianity? I mean going to somebody in your life and saying, you are so dear to me. You know how much better my life is because I know you? Well, you did that, man. It felt like the hand of God showed up in my life. And I just want you to know, listen to me now, boys. Like, I love you. I'm grateful for you. I don't know what it is. We like saying, love you, bro. whatever. Well, how many times have you left a funeral and heard someone say, man, I wish we talked to one another that way when they were still alive? We have no verse that says we have to wait until a eulogy to tell people wonderful things about them. So when I say if we became a people of radical honesty, I mean saying things like, my life is better because I know you. You are a gift to me. You are precious to me. And you can also say, like, hey, man, the way you talked to your wife there, I don't think that was really good. I think you really hurt her. And I think, when you made that decision, I'm worried how that's going to go for you. I think that's foolish. And I think I love you too much to let you go do something dumb. So I don't think you should do that. Next week, we're going to talk about how all of this is possible. And I think it will really be a deep, deep encouragement for us to see how loved we are and how pursued we are by God. How Jesus modeled this for us and how he empowers our friendship. But we have to be clear about what God intends friendship to be. So God intends friendship to be a place of real affection, human souls tuned to one another, safe with one another, where we can see one another, a place of participation where your needs are met and you help meet the needs of other people, and a place of honesty where we can reveal the mystery of who we are to one another. Next week, we'll consider how we can be a friend, how we can find a friend by pursuing God's vision of friendship, and I hope you can come back. But again, God's vision for friendship is marked by affection, participation, and honesty. If you're able and willing, stand with me and let's pray.